All right, G. So let's just kick it off a little bit. Quick life update. Man's is going through through midterms and probably exam hell. What's it like right now?
It's good being a student again. That's all I can say.
Is it weird for you? Because some people have told me in the past, like, they take a break from college and maybe go do their masters later, but there's a huge gap in between. Did the gap of you
Yeah,
working at the MBA affect now going to Stanford?
it, I mean, it definitely helps. Like the years of work experience, you
Right.
just forget what the process of like studying for exams is a
Yeah.
little bit. But like once you get those reps back, then you're good.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I was wondering about that. Obviously, studying is the main thing. So exams are almost done, and then winter break is soon to relax a bit,
When
or what?
relax a bit, but get back to planning for TBT 23.
Yes, TBT, India Rising, Brown Ballers, lots of stuff going on in that realm,
Hmm.
which obviously we're excited to keep pumping out. But let's dive into this one because I think we got something really interesting here, and I want to give some context before we dive in. Um, this is all about growing up Indian, and for me, the reason I came up with this idea was just like there were so many times growing up that I honestly just didn't want to associate being Indian, whether that was due to bullying or my friend circle, being literally non-Indian, all whites and other people, to now where I'm obviously older, wiser, more mature, and I love everything about it. And this is not just something that happened yesterday. It's been the last 15 plus years of my life, but it's just an interesting thing to think about. It's like it's two different sides. It's like night and day to now where like I fully own this. I want to share it. I post things on that we're doing in the holidays to kind of show the fans of people that are following, but also I want to see your side. Because you grew up a world traveler,
Yeah.
and also in India with high school, so very different. So I'm curious to see as this episode develops, like just the differences in how we grew up and how you feel growing up Indian as opposed to me.
Yeah, totally. What that diaspora experience is like.
Yeah,
Like,
you have the authentic, real experience.
yeah, it's funny. It's like the reverse NRI, like the
Yep.
non-resident Indian. A lot of people, the traditional path is like, you grow up in India, live in India, then you come to the States or Canada and like that, or the UK, and like that's where you're at. Like mine was very interesting where I started in the States, went to India, and then came back. Um, so yeah, going to high school in India was like interesting. Like our high school didn't even offer Hindi, which was like a bummer.
It didn't. Oh, because it was assumed you just knew it, right? That had to be
I mean,
why.
it was just yeah, it was the school was inside the American embassy, so
Okay, yeah.
I ended up taking like Spanish in New Delhi, which was I was just like, come on, man.
Let's touch on this real quick. So first of all, are you fluent in Hindi?
I'm really bad. I'm pretty basic.
You okay? So speaking it, but what about understanding it?
Yeah, like enough to get around.
So I'm in the stage now again, 30 plus, going back to I'm learning it again, right? I want to learn it because for me it's important not only to know it for what the things we're doing, in business, travel, culture, and just being an entrepreneur, but also like for the future of having children. Like, I'm not gonna be that individual who doesn't know the language when our kids are gonna learn it. So I'm going through that. But the reason I say that is, and I'm interested to hear your experience after is, and I'm always hit myself on the head for being so stupid to not listen to my mom, where my mom literally forced me and my brother to take indie lessons with a teacher during
Nice.
elementary school. And me being the cool kid that I thought I was, I was like, I don't need to do this shit. I don't want to be here. So I did it for a couple of weeks and learned some basics, and then I just stopped. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And to this day, man, I regret like not taking that seriously.
What age was that when you stopped?
I would probably say it was only like a summer that I did it for because it was a couple of weeks, but that
Yeah,
was probably like around like 10. Like I would say like
10.
9, 10.
Yeah.
Like still like early. Like that's a great time to learn a new language.
I was about to say that's the easiest time. Like it's only going to be harder now.
Oh man, like
Yeah.
now I'm learning. It's fine because I've been around so much, but it's like this is small things like the dialect and the vowels and the way like one word can mean the same thing in three different connotations. It's like, oh
Hmm.
man,
Yeah.
it's older, so it's different. But what was it for you? Like, did your parents want you to learn? Did you ever think about like, oh, I want to learn this?
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's funny. I've been thinking about it a lot in college too, because when it comes to like just being Indian or brown, like there's this, it's always so tough to qualify things because there's so much diversity within the country. Like there's so many brown people here at school that don't speak Hindi, not because they don't know it, it's because they're from other parts of the country.
Right.
And it can be so like frustrating to have this like Hindi centric focus when like they've been growing up in a world, in a reality in which like they just like that's just not the language that they're speaking. They're from the South or whatever. For me, to answer your questions, like yeah, my parents speak it all the time, like spoke it at home, like that's how I like pick it up here and there. um but it wasn't until I moved to India where I was like, like growing up in the diaspora is interesting. Like you have to force learning the language, right? Because you have to go to like the Sunday school, or you have to like intentionally like speak it at home. If you're not intentionally checking those boxes, like you're not going to have the opportunity to develop the skill.
No, 100%. I totally agree. A couple other things. I'm trying to like do some things that are relatable to the listeners to kick this episode off, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people have had some of these similar experiences growing up, especially just in North America, because I think it's obviously so different than growing up in India. But there was times where like, whether it's, I would say probably junior high, high school, it's like high school a little different, but junior high, it's like there's times where I felt as though it was not a taboo, might be the right word, might be the wrong word, but like to say that you're Indian, or like to associate with that, because within the circle that I grew up in, or the friends, like everyone was just like white or black or Hispanic. There wasn't like other Indians, or like at that time as things were growing up, like being brown like wasn't like a cool thing. It wasn't like you walk around like, yo, like, I'm Indian.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
this is what we do. So I'm curious, did you ever feel that way, or within your friend circle or groups growing up, that you're like, you didn't want to talk about being Indian?
So for me, it was interesting. I was born in DC, grew up in Australia, Singapore, went to high school in India. There are really large Indian diasporas in all of those places.
Mhm.
So I was, I guess, quote unquote, lucky, right? Like that was never something I had to struggle with, because those communities existed, um, in the spaces and where I was like spending my time, which was like really nice. It was a big privilege. I didn't have to think about identity really much growing up until I came to the States for college.
Interesting. That's actually a good point, because like, yeah, you were lucky to have those friend groups and circles that you could like relate to. So going back to this, like obviously, like the fact is that we both love the culture, right? I'll go back to just giving my own opinion, so I don't tie you in. But I love the
Yeah.
culture. I love everything about just being brown and being Indian, right? But when I was younger, I hid that, and now that I'm older, it's the complete opposite of like, I'm like, I don't know if it's just the confidence is different, or the comfortability is there, or just I'm just older, wiser, mature, which actually that's what I think it is. To the fact where it's like, yo, like we need to embrace these types of things. And I always go back to this. And I told you this before. It's like, I feel like within some of the friends groups and circles I have, this is something I've never talked about with anyone before. So for me, even like this, I don't know if this is like a vulnerable topic. It feels like it could be to some people, or even me to voice it to you. But I'm curious, like how you, when you heard me bring this up, like how does it feel to you? Like, does this feel like something that's like taboo to speak on? Hopefully this
No,
makes sense.
I know it makes total sense. I think when it comes to like growing up brown in the diaspora, like there's it's weird because you feel like there are like certain things you have to do. Like you have to watch Bollywood movies. You have to speak the language. You have to like maybe be on a dance team. Like growing up outside of the diaspora and like in India for high school, like you're just yourself. You do what you do. And I always thought it was really kind of tough when you're growing up brown in the diaspora and you feel like you have to check some boxes to like fit in. Like everyone, I don't know if they do this in Canada. Do people throw around the term like brown town?
Yeah, well, growing up, that was a big term.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big term, right? And it's like it doesn't carry a positive connotation, brown town. And like why is that? Like why do you think that is?
Well, I just don't think it's how would I compare this? I don't want to compare it to another term because it's going to sound bad, but
Yeah, it's gonna sound bad, but but just leave it.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, it's just,
I know what you mean.
not a
Yeah.
way to represent anything within our culture or how we live, or our cities. It's funny you say that, because I haven't heard that since I was probably in junior high, but people used to be like, they would is crazy. I remember people will pull up to us, actually in high school the most, because like that's when I started really finding like a lot of brown friends, especially in the area I grew up. And people would literally pull up and be like, yo, did we just enter Browntown? Or like, the India's over there, or like, brown squads living over there. And I used to just kind of be like, what the heck? Like, this is kind of crazy.
It's not even like it's a bad thing, right? You're calling out the fact that like a
Yeah,
lot
no.
of people are there, but I don't know why I mean, it sounds like it would just hit you. Like when someone would use that kind of stuff, it's just like, oh, this feels weird. Like, why does that feel weird?
Yeah, why? That's the thing. Why does it feel weird? Um,
Yeah.
I go back to this other point because I don't want to leave this out because I feel like this is a big part of the story for me is um used to have friends come over all the time to the house. And again, I'm curious on your thoughts on this. Um, I'm very blessed for my mom and especially my nanny to really ingrain the culture in us. Like we used to do everything right growing up. Like there's nothing we didn't
Yeah.
do. We used to sing bhajans, the Gayatri Mantra. Like I was ingrained in it, man. I just wish I took it seriously because I feel like it would have
Yeah.
changed everything for me. But if you come into our old house, we have the altar, which I'm sure you may have had or may not have had, but like we have the altar with like all the gods, and it's like that's
Yeah.
we do our prayers. And around the house, there's also like different paintings, or like there's a sculpture of Ganesh or whatever the case is. All that stuff was fine, but I used to find when I was younger and my friends would come over, whether it be a birthday party or whatever, and our altar was in this thing that you can close. The first thing I would do, and it's weird because I was thinking about this when I was creating this episode, is like I used to close the altar before
From
anyone,
who? Who would you close the altar
before the
from?
friends came over. I would just close it. It was like it became like this instinctual thing, and I was thinking about, it's like, man, like that's like wow, like whether I was embarrassed or I didn't want to talk about it or I didn't want anyone to see, like I don't know what it was at that point because it was so long ago, but it probably was all of those. I'm just curious, like, what's your thoughts hearing that, and is that something you ever experienced?
I mean, it's not something I've experienced, but I want to ask you more about that. Like,
Yeah,
what you're closing the altar, your friends come over, they leave, you open it back up again. Did your parents ever
yeah.
catch you closing the altar? Like, what is this? What
Oh
does
yeah,
this look
mom.
like?
Mom used to be like confused, like she used to literally just be like confused, like why, like, and I don't know the
Because
exact answer. I'm
how do
just
you
like,
defend that as a kid?
yeah,
Yeah.
I just think as a kid, I don't know what I would have said, like being the stupid kid that I was. But I just know that I would instinctually like close it and then open it when people would leave. Um, and I remember there was a few times when obviously like I had friends come over or whatever, people who'd been over, and like I didn't, and it was open.
Yeah.
And I can remember as I was again writing this episode, like those times feeling weird, like, oh, did they see that? You know what I mean? It's like it's weird stuff. It's like I don't know why that was a thing for me, but I just think because I grew up so different. Like I said, I grew up where like that wasn't a thing. Like you didn't celebrate being brown when I grew up in junior high and before that. It was just like you were who you were, but all the other friends, like no one celebrated that at all. So I think that
Do you
affected.
think, I was going to say, do you think people celebrate it now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I know because you see it more. Well, obviously, like social media, you see it more. I still don't think it's celebrated and shown as much as it could be because I do still think like, and again, I'm different, but I think there was a lot of people in my shoes when I was growing up in the city at that time that were feeling the same things or experiencing the same things that I was. And I think as they grew up, I'm lucky to say that I feel like I've evolved out of that or whatever. But I feel like a lot of people didn't, and I feel like I don't want to get too far into this, but this is where you start seeing crossover in cultures, and maybe like now you're more interested in white girls or different culture, and like all those things start to bleed over, in my opinion. Not to get too far into that, we'll leave that there. But I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense also because I think that's
It
a
all
valid
makes
point because
sense.
I have a lot of friends that did that. So I can speak on that, just not from making things up, but yeah, that's kind of where that's at.
I mean, it's cool because that anecdote of the altar and things like that, like they come in different shapes and forms for people. Like maybe somebody else is not closing an altar, but when they speak in Hindi, they like leave the room. Um, Hiding your culture because the goal of being in the diaspora is to fit in, not stand out sometimes.
Oh, but
Um,
seriously, that's actually it right there. That sentence you just said, it's all about trying to fit in. I think that's all that I was trying to do in junior high and going to high school. And then you talk about Bollywood movies. So some other interesting stuff. So obviously grew up. I've seen every Bollywood movie. I don't care what anyone says. I've seen them all. We celebrate everything. In my house, my mom and dad, Indian music 24/7. Old school stuff, new school stuff, whatever was out at the time, right? Always playing. I remember certain times also being in the car and your parents pick you up from a party or from basketball games. And I remember I would try to get in the car first to turn off mom or dad's music or turn it to the radio station first before like the homies in the backseat got in.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I don't know if the things I'm saying are crazy. I would hope that other people like.
No, I think most people are going to relate to them because that is the truth. Like people,
Yeah.
that behavior change is like, yeah,
It's kind of crazy for me to sit back here and talk to you about it now because obviously I haven't before, but to hear it out loud, it's like, oh shit, this is like some
yeah.
stupid stuff that was going on back in the day.
I don't even know if you can't really call it stupid though. It's like, there's no right, here's the thing, like, there's no right way to like relate to your culture. Um, the only probably wrong thing you can probably do is if you just like shut it out completely because for the wrong reasons. Like what you're doing isn't shutting out. You're like figuring out how to navigate two kind of worlds,
Yeah.
which I think is like
That's a good way to put it again.
all immigrants like deal with that.
Yeah. Because I fully embrace it. But yeah, like you said, just try to navigate two sides where like at home, um, this is another thing. Like at home, like on the weekends, like I look forward to we would order in pizza or food and we'd watch a Bollywood movie. But on the outside world, I wouldn't go tell anyone, that I would have said, yeah, we watched this English American movie or we watched whatever, The Simpsons. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting how you basically summarized everything so nicely into two sentences,
no,
which is great.
I mean, I was just one last thing I want to say on this topic before we move on to is just like I was having this conversation with a lot of people, both in undergrad and grad. That's just like there's no right way to kind of go about this stuff. Like there's a lot of people who really don't love watching Bollywood movies, but love their culture. And sometimes it can be really toxic. The culture of like, oh, you don't speak Hindi? Like, what's up with that? Or like, oh, like you're not doing puja. Oh, you're like, you haven't seen this Bollywood movie. Are you even brown? It's like, yes, I'm definitely brown. I'm sorry I didn't watch one of like 1,000 films. Like, I think that's the really important thing because it keeps. So you're talking about like the people who are on the maybe not people who are on the outside, but people who have like walked away from their culture, maybe because it's hurt them, or maybe because they didn't do a good job of like navigating both worlds. Like those people get left on the outside or like don't want to like celebrate Diwali despite being brown, not because they don't like Diwali, it's because they've have a lot of memories, whether they're young or in college, of like being treated like an outsider or being treated like hey, you're not really one of us. And the more like I don't know, we'll never know what the lived experiences are of other subgroups, but like the less brown people can do that, trying to like push other brown people on the outside for like not checking their boxes of what it means to be Indian, like the better off we'll all be, I feel. Because I feel like I've definitely experienced that at the undergrad and grad level. Like in college communities, like the petri dish that they are, like it's a continual like size up of like what your Desiness is. And it's like it's not a battle you're gonna win like all the time.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess the question for you is, and I want to hear your thoughts on both of these, but when or has it become cool to be brown now? And I guess the question for you is like, in your mind, was there someone that paved the way? And I'm going to bring this up first before you answer that question. And I'm not saying this is the person who did that, because I think there's two sides to this story. But like, when Russell Peters popped off, that changed, I think, a lot of things. That there were some positives, and obviously there was a lot of negative takeaways of that. So what's your thoughts there?
Dude, this is great. I love this question. Okay, let me dive into this Russell Peters thing real quick. I remember going to school in Singapore. Russell Peters popped off. All of a sudden, doesn't matter what race you are in Singapore, in the school, it's a very diverse school. Everyone was laughing with Russell Peters and like trying to impersonate his jokes. Like pre-social media. Like
Yeah.
you're just like telling the story. I'll never forget like the amount of brown kids during the talent show, that the amount of brown kids that signed up to do the talent show, and what was their talent? They literally just wanted to go on stage and like be a stand-up comedian. They weren't even writing their own jokes. They were just like reciting Russell Peter jokes because they had the confidence to go up there on stage and be like, okay, I know this is going to hit with like a mainstream audience. Like
That's dope.
the 3450 joke, like I can do. And here's the thing that's special. It's like there's plenty of stand-up comedians, but like they finally saw a stand-up comedian. They're like, okay, this like Indo-Canadian dude, I'm gonna just like absorb his identity, take his stand-up jokes, go to the talent show, and perform for my entire class. I like vividly remember this, like sixth, fifth grade, whatever. That is the first time in which I saw like brownness in like a public setting, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it before, right? Like you see like whatever, like the Indian cricket team, or like there's tons of celebrities before Russell Peters. But like when it really impacted me was like that talent show experience where like people wanted to go up on stage and like talk about like brown jokes to everyone and not do it in just like, I don't know, like a Sunday family friends meetup, you know, where you kept it like very like siloed
100%.
or pigeonholed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and obviously for us too, like he was Canadian, so he was blowing up over here.
Yeah.
It was just so mainstream. He was doing Christmas holiday specials, TV show, this all kind of stuff, and yeah, that made just kind of similar to you that we weren't doing talent shows, but there was kids like just pulling up in the hallways. You'd walk by them and they're, yo, did you hear this? Did you watch the Russell Peters special? Or like, yo, did you hear about this joke? And it was just cool to see, like I said, like someone that was brown, like getting, I guess, positive notoriety in the community where people were like wanting to follow him, and he popped off for a couple of years, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's a lot of examples of this where it's like Mindy Kaling in The Office, blah, blah, blah. Like they're the folks that hit the mainstream, and like that is like very common now, honestly. It wasn't when you and I were growing up.
Exactly.
But you're still left with a sense of like there's always like all these just like one-offs. Like it's not a what's the percentage? I'm trying to remember. I feel like it's like South Asian make up like 3% of the total population, in at least in the States. I don't know what Canada is.
Yeah.
But for 3%, like is that level of you know, seeing that representation, is that like what you should expect? Like maybe that is like maybe that is the max, maybe that is the ceiling of what we're seeing right now. I hope it wouldn't be, but it's like
I hope not.
I do think about it sometimes. I'm like, you know, for the numbers at which we're at, like does this make sense? Like what am I hoping for? Like what am I trying to solve for here? Like, you know what I mean?
No, 100%. Yeah, I hope that we're not anywhere near the ceiling and that we're going to see a lot more. I also feel like obviously within this type of topic or episode, there's like a lot that we can uncover. And
Yeah.
I'm actually curious, obviously, like to put this out and just see feedback. And I definitely want to share it and see if other people would be open to be vulnerable or come on and, you know, share their experiences. So
Yeah.
to the fans of the community listening, like, you know, first of all, we, you know, gee, I don't know when the last time you checked the stats was, but I hope I'm not wrong about this, but we've passed 4,000 downloads, which is huge. Two guys, you know, hanging up, you know, chopping up about certain things,
Chopping two guys chopping it up.
You know, we appreciate everyone around the world. You know, there's India, Bangalore, like Canada, US. Obviously, we're getting listens from all over. So shout out to all of you guys, and the reviews are coming in hot. The 5-star reviews. Couple hundred 5-star reviews last time I checked.
Hey, but don't stop. We still need them.
No, we need everything. We need you to download.
But don't stop.
Where I'm going with this is, you know, reach out to us. Like, if you've shared a similar experience or disagree or agree, like you want to have a voice, like, yo, I think it'd be cool to bring some of you on and keep building this out together, because this is all either hopefully shared experiences or not. But you know, this is all about, you know, giving opinions and our experiences and just being able to talk and be open about these things.
Dude, that's our call to action. Come on the show. What's your Russell Peters moment? Like, we've got episodes for all of you. Like, literally though, like it's a disservice for us to be like, okay, the growing up Indian episode or growing up brown episode, like 20 to 30 minutes. All right, moving on. Like, this is a much deeper one that honestly is probably the most fun to talk about and the most deep and interesting. So let's get some more guests on here to dive through this. If you're interested, hit us up and let's do this thing.
Until next time, man. Take us out, G.
Take care, everybody. Peace out.